This is the Aftermarket Radio Network.
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Auto Repair Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Walker, and today my guest is Stan Stokes, and I'm going to introduce him to y'all in a minute, but first, let's take a second to thank our sponsors. This episode is sponsored by ShopBoss, shop management software that works the way you need it to right out of the box. Are you ready to convert clients to members? AppFueled specializes in creating custom apps tailored specifically for auto repair businesses. Build client loyalty. Get started today with your own customer loyalty app. Visit appfueled.com. Well, hey, Stan, how are you?
Hey, Brian. Good to see you again, man.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have you on here today. Just to give our listeners a little context before we get started, Stan and I were just at the Tools show together in Pennsylvania. We'd never met before that. I don't know how we've never met because I see that you've been around the industry for a while. And Stan has an awesome new product called Guest X. And as we go through our episode today, we'll introduce a bit of that to you. You know, our goal is never to be promotional on these podcasts, but he's built a tool that I really think is going to be a game changer in the industry. So I want to make sure that y'all know some about that. But you know, Stan has got an incredible marketing background. I can let you tell us a little bit about that, Stan. And he and I just have some really common beliefs on some things. So I'm just excited to have you here today to talk about all of this.
Well, man, me too. It's great. It is a small, big world. Automotive is, you know, and so it's great that we got a chance to meet. Super excited to bring some of our insights to your podcast group and your listeners. And, you know, really our goal is just to bring some things to light that really help us focus on fine-tuning our efficiencies and our processes and maximizing everybody's potential. So really, really grateful that you, I think I've embraced what you and I have been talking about and excited to share it. So thanks for having me.
So tell us a little bit about your background in marketing.
Well, I've been in marketing going on probably 2 decades now. So really, I got into marketing right when Google came out with local search. So I'm going to date myself. And that was somewhere around 2005, 2006. And if you remember prior to that, marketing advertising was very simple for a small business owner. It was print, radio, and TV and word of mouth and getting out, kissing babies and shaking hands. And when Google came along, you know, this search thing happened. People needed a website and this AdWords things popped up and just flipped everybody upside down. And then that industry just blew up and traditional marketers got involved in digital space, and then social media came along. And so I've been around since the beginning of it. It's been an interesting ride. The complexity of it is a lot when you're a small business owner, especially a shop owner, but any small business owner. If you don't have a bench or a good partner, it's hard because it's a lot of data. I mean, we're very data driven today. And I don't know about you, but most business owners don't want to know all the nuts and bolts. They want to know, did it drive my intention, which was, did it increase my business? And so I've been a part of that evolution, continue to be a part of it. A lot of things we're doing at GuestX is based on what I've learned, you know, sitting in that role and really starting to separate the difference between marketing and operations. And I think that's been, matter of fact, we've spent the last 5 years studying this. And it was a lot of heavy lifting to validate our hunches. I think we all have hunches, but, you know, my team is more sitting around, let's do some data validation on this. A lot of my team is operations people. And I'm more shifted to the operations side. Even though I was in marketing, I brought an operational perspective to it. So you gave me some data. Great. How do I operationalize that data? And if I can't operationalize it, what's the point of it?
You know, just to keep our listeners from having to wait too long to kind of understand what it is that we're going to get into today. You know, some of the conversations that you and I had when we were at Tools were all around marketing and this idea that, like, when a shop gets slow, the first place that a shop owner will often look is to marketing. You know, they're calling up their marketer and they're like, hey, we're slow. What is going on? And because you have that marketing background, if I understand right, one of the reasons that you built GuestX was to help people understand that when that happens, it's not always the marketing that's causing the issue. So that's going to be the overall theme of a lot of what we're talking about today. And I also want to make sure that everyone knows we're not being apologists or anything for marketing, because sometimes it is absolutely the marketing. But there's other things that you may want to look at. And ultimately, it's one of the primary functions that GuestX is going to do, is to help you look at these things and determine where the problem actually is. So tell us a little bit about that, your thoughts on the idea that it may not be the marketing.
Yeah, well, it's organically happened. And I think that's the challenge we have, is that if you just think about call recording really took off when digital came along, right? And you got to click. I'm going to put a phone number on that click to the AdWords so I can show you that you got a phone call from this marketing campaign. And now we know everybody's got call tracking numbers. And so I think just organically, we think of when business is down, I need to call my marketing guy because that's where all my phone calls are. And, marketing then says, well, we did drove you some leads and let's listen to some calls. And so through that evolution, I think we organically have just thought that when business is down, who can answer that question the most for me? Well, that might be my marketing guy who's driving my campaigns. And oh, by the way, he records my calls for me too. So I call up, hey, Brian, business is down. What's going on with our traffic? What are customers doing? Why is nobody doing this? All the questions. And so after years and years and years of trying to answer that question for people, I quickly started to realize that that's not marketing's job. That's an operations job, right? And I didn't hire you to define process for me. I didn't hire you to tell me how my team is doing or what my team is doing, or position that you did drive me a lead, right? And then talk about, well, let's talk about what the definition of a lead is. What is a phone call and all those things. And so I think it's just happened, Brian, organically, because that was the platform that we would go to, and we tied that to market.
Now, when that's happening, we're talking about, business is down. Sometime, there are absolutely times, throughout the year, or, they can be impacted by so many different things, but there are times when the phone rings less than other times. There's no getting around that. And there are times when marketing is not performing the way that marketing needs to perform. But especially in those times, that's when you have to make sure that the people on your team are doing everything that they're supposed to be doing the right way. And just to give people a little sneak peek, this is kind of where GuestX comes in. And one of the things that you said to me when we were at Tools, and I could tell that you were really passionate about this too, was you were like, it's marketing's job to get the lead. It's the service advisor's job to turn that lead into a customer. That is one of the functions that GuestX is helping you to understand what's happening. So let's talk about that a little bit.
When we started really studying this, not from the eyes of marketing, but really studying it from an operations perspective, is that one, there were a couple of terms in the industry that we wanted to bring to light. And one of those terms was lead to customer conversion rate. I've heard it for years, right, Brian? Everybody hears that. And I really wanted to define that, because what I found in working with all of the CRM platforms and the marketing platforms is that they were labeled as leads, because technically I'm marketing for you, so I've got to give a label to something that I did for you. So I'm going to label it as a lead. Well, if I clicked on your website and I called, how do you know that I'm not a current customer? How do you know that I'm not post-service? How do you know that I'm not a work in progress? Not every phone call is an opportunity to do a new service work. And so that was the first thing we wanted to do, is we said, okay, let's redefine this word. Why don't we say it's a phone call? And then let's take that phone call and put it into some type of classification where we can separate some things. Because again, if I'm trying to look at my return on investment, I want to take actual number of leads, define what a lead is. There's an opportunity to schedule an appointment with someone and get them in and service their vehicle. That's a lead. What's not a lead is someone looking for something you don't provide, someone that's already got their vehicle there, someone that had their car serviced last week. So one is to separate those. And then number two, we used the word lead to customer. The customer piece was we were matching up that phone number in the POS system. And so we got this industry average out there, somewhere between 10 and 30% lead to customer conversion rate, which was astonishing to me because I was sitting here going, how is it that we know that consumers are in market when they have an automotive repair need? Number one. Number two, there's no such thing as a shopper. We just use that as an excuse. And I'll define what a shopper is. That is someone that never had an intent to make a purchase. That's my definition of a shopper, right? And we've done some studies to say, if you were to call back all the people you thought were shopping because they were asking for a price, I'm willing to bet that they got their vehicle serviced within 72 hours. Statistically, they do, right? Nobody gets up in the morning and says, I think I'm going to need brakes 6 months from now. So why do I call around and shop around, as we call them, shop around for it? So starting to get this insight, we said, well, first of all, there's some different numbers we need to be looking at. And really, I'm going to start out looking at what I call a booked appointment rate. Because if to go from a phone call or an inquiry to revenue requires 2 or 3 steps. It's not from here to here. It's first, can I schedule an appointment for you? Do you show up? Do you approve the work? Now I can close out a work order, and I do the work and I close out the work order. So we really wanted to look at, from an operations perspective, let's dig into each of those components separately and understand what those conversions are from one to another. Then we can start looking at validating process. Does that make sense? And so that's where this really shifts from marketing to operations. I listened to a call. It was somebody in need of services. Now, I can sit here and make an excuse all I want to and say, oh, they're price shopping. Well, let's talk about consumer behavior because we studied that too. There's 2 types of service needs. There's only 2 types. It's either planned or unplanned events. That's it. My engine light's on, unplanned. I'm having a reminder about my oil change, my factory recommended service is coming up. I can plan for that. My tires are getting to that threshold. I can plan for that. But if my engine's knocking, unplanned. My car won't start, unplanned. That's it. They're either planned or unplanned. The characteristics of that call are very different. One has a high level of anxiety and one probably doesn't, right? And so we started studying all these things and studying consumer behavior and then listening and analyzing the calls. But again, what we're really shifting to is I'm now not focused on marketing. I'm focused on how this conversation took place. Where did it go left? Where did it go right? What was the outcome? And is it the expected outcome I have as an operator? I want more cars in my bay, period. And do I really understand what it takes that to happen? Do I have the tools? Do I have the insight? A lot of it's not, the insight's not there, period. You got to go into the marketing platform and listen to your calls. And then we walk into those calls going, well, some type of compliance we're looking for. Did you do a greeting? Did you do discovery? Did you go through the appointment process? Did you close? And so we spend 2 or 3 hours going through that and what I call spot checking the call. Well, I really can't get an accurate reading of anything if I'm spot checking calls. I really need to look at all of my phone calls to get some level of measurement, because ultimately what we're going to come back to, Brian, is that good? And can it get better? And if that's good or can it get better, the question then comes down to how long is that going to take and how much is that going to cost me? So all of these things, Brian, are all, I know that was a mouthful, but really if you look at this cycle, it's really looking at this from the lens of operation and the processes and the training and all the things that we're going out and trying to do in the industry. There's just nothing that can help us quantify that very easily.
ShopBoss is software built by shop owners for shop owners. ShopBoss offers real solutions backed by real experience. Simply put, it's shop management software that works your way. When customers are in the lobby and cars are on the lift, you don't have time for a learning curve. That's where ShopBoss comes in, with profit-boosting features that work the way you need them to right out of the box. From built-in DVI to robust customizable reporting, ShopBoss makes everything about running a shop work more smoothly. Plus, with their Boss Pay Payments feature powered by 360 Payments, you can enter the era of totally paperless payments. From text to pay, remote payments, and consumer financing options, to compliance, surcharging, and now even offering PayPal and Venmo options. Everything is built right into ShopBoss. Plus, everything is backed by a fantastic support team with one goal in mind: your success. Be the boss with ShopBoss. Independent auto repair shops, get ready to transform your business with AppFueled. It's time for your professional auto service shop to have its own customer loyalty app. AppFueled will build an app that launches a custom loyalty program for your shop in 30 days or less, fully integrated with your point of sale system. Bring Fortune 500 level customer retention strategies to your business without the Fortune 500 budget. Many shops are enjoying the benefits. Our app engages your customers with a loyalty ladder, enticing them to climb the next rung, coming back more often and spending more each visit, all with your own app. Build loyalty with your customers to your brand and boost your shop's growth. Get your first app in 30 days or less, all without breaking the bank. Ready to start? Let AppFueled take your business to the next level. Go to appfueled.com or meet founder Jeremy Glasgow and book your complimentary app vision session at appfueled.com/Jeremy. That's appfueled.com/Jeremy. I love hearing being said because it lines up with some of our largest frustrations as marketers. And one of the things that you were essentially saying there is that there's really no such thing as a price shopper, because that is one of the things that we will hear from clients a lot is, oh, well, these calls from these Google ads are just a bunch of price shoppers. I mean, you essentially said nobody wakes up in the morning and decides, oh, let me call some auto repair shops and see how much something would cost, because that would just be fun to do. They have a need. But what I have always heard the coaches in the industry say is that the caller does not know what else to ask. When they call you and they ask how much is a brake job, it's because they don't know what else they should be asking. So you said the studies show that that person is going to have that vehicle repaired within 72 hours. So what should the conversation look like when someone calls a shop and, their question is, how much is it for XYZ service?
Well, what's interesting, as we did this research, we found that every conversation with someone that's never been to your shop before, that conversation starts one of two ways, always. It's either how much is or do you fix, or a combination of both, or some story that gets back to how much is or do you fix. Because I don't know anything about you. I have a Tahoe and the transmission's making some noise, or some noise is coming out. Well, I'm first either thinking, do you fix Tahoes? Because I only want a Tahoe guy on my vehicle. Or I'm thinking, oh crap, how much is this going to cost? So you got to think about the consumer behavior and realize that they are not the ones on the receiving end. You're on the receiving end. So you get this question asked all day long. And so you've coined this phrase with, man, all I do is get price shoppers. And we've used that as an excuse to justify our behavior. But go back from the consumer and let's shift this out of automotive for a minute. Let's talk about something that people in automotive, put yourself in the consumer and your HVAC system stops working. What do you think first? What's your immediate reaction?
This is going to be expensive. Actually, in Louisiana, the first thing I'm thinking is, this is about to be hot and I need to find someone who can get out here today and fix this.
So how fast, right? So that would be a combination of how much is do you fix? And if you answer that question, then we're going to move to how quickly. But depending upon the sense of urgency, if I'm broke down on the side of the road, I don't care how much. I want to know how fast. But I'm probably still going to coin the conversation around, do you fix this? Do you do towing? Do you guys work on this? Can you help me? Followed by how quickly. If you just take yourself and think about a consumer behavior, is I want answers to my immediate need. And my immediate need is, can you, how quick, and how much? And that's all I know. That's all I know. And so I'm not a price shopper. And you've said it, the coaches in this industry have tried to train us. The hard part is navigating that conversation. And the hard part is measuring your team's ability to do that, because you got to be able to measure something first before you can improve upon it.
So when it comes to the service advisors, and this is not an episode to pick on service advisors, but they are the ones who are going to be picking up the phone in most cases and need to convert that person from a lead into a customer. What are the most common patterns that you're seeing? Because y'all are listening to these phone calls and you've built a tool that is analyzing how good of a job that person who answers the phone is doing. So what are the most common patterns that you are seeing that are causing shops to lose those opportunities that are hitting their phones every day?
One is the first thing I just talked to you, justifying our behavior. Number two is I don't think we really have a handle on what this number is, because there's nothing out there that tells you that. We got lead to customer conversion rate. We don't have booked appointment rate. We don't have the accuracy to say of your 100 calls that came in. And that's obviously what we've been able to figure out how to do pretty effectively. What this ultimately leads to, Brian, is that I believe any business owner and providers of data, you're a provider of data, GuestX is a provider of data. When I give you some data, you're then going to ask, is that good? Yes. Is that a good number? Hey, Brian, is that a good click-through rate? Is that a good return on our investment? How do I compare to the other shops? Very common questions.
Let me rephrase the question. I'm looking for, you have this tool that's analyzing how good the service advisors are doing. What are the mistakes that they are making that is causing the shop to lose the opportunities?
There's two things that we're looking at. One is we want to look at the outcome of something. Did you do this? Then I want to measure your effort at doing that. And let's call that effort compliance. Okay. I got a process at a shop. Brian, I asked you to do a greeting, do a discovery, do this. So once we kind of figure out what that compliance measure is, then we can drill in and see what things are getting missed. And some of the most common ones that are missed is, and it depends upon a lot about the service advisor. We always say right person in the right seat. It takes a unique skill set to deal with those kind of calls. How much is? Well, what has been the most common answer that we've come up with? I don't know until I look at your car. Well, what's that led into? That's led into the diagnostic conversation, which really even blows the phone call up more. So it's the skill set to be able to navigate around that piece and address ultimately what this is going to come down to: trust and time. That's really what it's going to come down to. And so where we find things happen is that we struggle to ask questions versus answering questions. How much is? That's this price. Okay, thanks, bye. We are taught at an early age, when someone asks you a question, you answer. It's human nature. It's inherent, right? Your mom always said, hey, when somebody's talking to you, you need to answer. So it's inherent that we do that. So you got to retool yourself. How much is that? Well, there's two ways to go about it. One, if I go the wrong way, I'm going to piss you off because I didn't answer your question and you're going to hang up. Or two, I'm going to figure out a way to navigate this to get control of the conversation and help me understand how I can ultimately answer your question. Your question is how much? Well, I'm probably going to navigate. The struggle is the navigation of that component in the conversation. And we have to have some learned behavior or be taught. And I see a lot of trainers doing a really good job of how to navigate that conversation. Well, let's break that down into two pieces. We have menu items and non-menu items. Non-menu items, there needs to be some discovery on what's going on with your vehicle. How much is a tune-up? That is a non-menu item, and I have no idea. But instead of getting into I have no idea, let me charge you $179 to do a diagnostic, which even gets further confusing. Would you agree?
Yeah, and that is where so many shops are losing people, is on their diagnostic fee. And I understand the desire to be transparent about that from the beginning, because you'd rather have that conversation on the phone when they are handing you their keys and they're like, well, why didn't you tell me that before? But it's a tough one to navigate.
But we've done that to ourselves. Let's be clear. This is not behavior of the consumer. We've taught the consumer how to ask that question because we brought that to the industry. That's internal terminology. Consumer, do you even know what a diagnostic is as a consumer? I don't. As a consumer, right? What does diagnostic mean? Well, as a consumer, I don't want to.
Oh, that's where you hook the machine up to it and the machine tells you what's wrong with the car, right?
Yeah, do you want to charge me 100? And we just go down this rabbit hole versus turn around saying, well, Brian, let me ask you a question, bud. What led you to feel like this is, well, tell me what's going on with your car, first of all. And depending upon the situation, a non-menu item, I want to address the concerns. Well, lots of ways to take that. Hey, how much is a tune-up? Well, while I'm taking a look at that, let me ask you, is your car drivable right now? I'm going to address the inconvenience that we're getting ready to attack. Are you safe? Are you okay? Yeah, man, I'm good. So while you're getting this repaired, are you going to need a secondary vehicle or loaner? We have a loaner. Whatever it is that I'm going to accommodate things you don't know to ask me about. And what we've seen is we start to address the other issues that we know that are going to come up. We kind of start to see the behavior change on the consumer side. Does that make sense? Hopefully that's answering your question, right? Is what is it that we're seeing the most of in these conversations around non-menu items? A menu item, there is nothing to talk about. It's a convenience issue. Hey, I need an oil change. How much is that? Menu item, competitively priced. Now it's going to come down to convenience and how quick I can get you in. I need an inspection.
But even in those cases, we see very often that they're not doing things like asking for the appointment.
Absolutely.
How much is the oil change?
How much is an oil change?
And they'll sometimes give the price and then never ask.
Correct. Yeah. There's an old saying, answer with a question keeps you in control of the conversation. But that's a skill set, Brian. That ultimately comes down to my skill set, right? Do I know that? Have I been taught that? Has somebody trained me on that? Well, that opens up all into training. And we have some great trainers in this industry. I mean, we're loaded with great trainers. And so this circle has started now that I've got the awareness, I'm looking at this. Obviously, we want to bring the efficiency of looking at that information very quickly, what we're doing. But ultimately, that's what I see based on the data we've studied, that's what's going on these conversations. It's our inability to take control of the conversation. And the easiest way to do that is to answer a question with a question. How much is? That is this. Okay, thanks, bye. I didn't take any control. I just answered your questions. And you probably see these all the time. They're most common, right? All the time.
So what are the traits of those top performing service advisors?
Great question. Because one of the things we started doing when we started this process is that we knew, especially from an operations perspective, that ultimately it's going to get down to, do I have the right person in the right seat doing this? And we do a lot of conversations around this. It's a great question. Everybody in the industry asks it, but nobody has a tool to determine that. There lies the problem. We started doing some research and we started looking at how could I predict someone's potential, not personality, but potential. And what does that mean? So let's just take a very basic one. It would be great if I could determine your comfort with conflict. Now, why do I say that's a big one? How much is? I don't know until I look at your car. 90% of our conversations start with conflict. Agreed? Then you get my car and you come in. So go for the booked appointment, I show up, you do your nice DVI, you send it to me, and you have 5 other problems. I'm already on the defense when I've looked at that DVI report and I came in for an oil change. Am I not? Hey, man, I just came in to get my oil change. What is all this stuff? So if you think about the role of a service advisor, we're going to do some workshops on this and some upcoming events, is the role of the service advisor has changed. 80% of their job is some type of conversation. Would you agree? I'm either talking to you on the phone about bringing your vehicle in, or I don't really do a lot of texting and booking an appointment. You go online, you lose the online schedule, you either do it or you don't. There's not a lot of things going on there. And that's why you see a high conversion rate with online booking. But if a consumer doesn't know anything, they're going to pick up the phone and call you, especially if it's a non-menu item. And so that is a skill set. The other piece of that skill set, and that when we talk about that conflict piece, is that when we're going over recommendations, you can listen to those conversations and you'll pick up where someone's just not comfortable. And so being able to measure that and determine someone's ability and predict that does 2 things. One, it answers the question of, can Stan do this? Yes, he can. How long is it going to take? And how much money am I going to have to spend to get him there? We say this all the time. Dr. Marshall says this all the time. He says it really comes down to how long and how much to get someone to the performance potential I want them at. Does that make sense? So these inherent, we call them inherent traits, or these things that we assess, is we're assessing very specific, role-specific things of a service advisor. Comfort with conflict is one of them. Understanding what motivates them. I hear this is a great, I'm just going to create a comp plan and I'm going to incentivize my guys financially. Hear that all the time, don't you, Brian? I'll restructure this. And now that kind of know this, if we convert more leads, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this. That's great. But what happens to the service advisor that's not financially motivated?
I had that situation with one of the technicians in my shop, and I'm a very money motivated person. So, and I think that we tend to look at the way that we think about things and put it off on other people. But I had, one of my technicians, just an excellent technician, one of those guys that never had a comeback, but he was going to do 25, 30 hours a week. And that was it, whereas every other one of my technicians in the shop, they were high performers. Like 50 hours was a bad week for them. But, this guy, like we could offer more money, but he did not care. That was not his thing. What he wanted more time off to go spend with his family. And it's like, okay, well, if you can still get that 30 hours done in 4 days, then we'll let you have a 3-day weekend. And man, did that motivate him.
Absolutely. But how long did it take you to figure that out?
It took quite a while. And it was actually at a coaching program where they were talking about the various things that people are motivated by. And it was like, wow, we've never thought of that.
Yeah. And so when you put all these pieces together, this comes down to 3 things. I want to measure outcome of something. Did this happen? So did you book an appointment or not? Did you get an approval or not? Because as an operator, most operators are very what I call enterprising. They're visionaries. They're looking at top line numbers and they're moving forward, right? That's why we own our own business. But most of the people who work for us or operate for us are very tactical in manner. They follow process. They need the book. They need the manual, right? And so when you look at the things that we're trying to do is if I can reduce the amount of time it takes you to answer the question that you just went through, there's a huge impact on that. Financially, there's an impact because what I call the cost, and I don't like the word bad hire, the wrong fit, right? But we use the word bad hire. It's some of our jargon we use, but it's a wrong fit. It gets back to fit for role. And the cost of that is well in the 6 figures now. It takes at least 90 days, more around 6 months to determine that, depending upon the front of the house, the back of the house, and your experience, right? But what were you at risk? That guy had been with you a while. Yes, he was a good technician, so you didn't want to lose him, but you were on the risk of losing him if you didn't really start understanding what motivates him. And as soon as you said, I'm going to accommodate what drives you, I'm going to give you an extra day off, you got the behavior you were looking for, the outcome you were looking for. Yes. So it's being able to put these 3 things together, know what my outcome is, measure my effort to that. Will they, can they? And then ultimately, what's their ability to do it, which is performance potential. If you put all 3 of those together, then you're solving this problem very quickly and cost effectively.
So you talked about, is this person capable of doing these things? And at least I am, talking a little heavy on the phone skills side. And there's so much more to it than that. There's a lot of skills with the face-to-face and all of that are just as important. But if you're not good on the phone, then they're never going to see you face-to-face to give you that opportunity. So, when it comes to things like phone skills or those face-to-face skills with the client and learning how to answer a question with a question and control the conversation and overcome objections and all of these things, how much have y'all found of that is natural talent versus learned behavior?
I think you have to define what inherent and learned behavior is. And so Dr. Marshall, that's been in this industry studying behavior for 40 plus years, and they've assessed 30, 40 million people worldwide. Obviously, a content expert will talk about there's really 3 primary traits that are inherent. They're not going to change. Enterprising, achievement, and independence. Enterprising, achievement, and independence. Those are learned at an early age. Okay. Learned behavior is comfort with conflict, your emotional orientation. Then the third one is attitudes and beliefs. What are attitudes and belief? Your listening style. Okay. You either listen to understand or you listen to respond. Lifestyle events. So the two bottom of those, right? Your learned behaviors and your attitudes and beliefs. One, you can learn things. So can I teach someone to be comfortable with conflict? Sure, you can. It's a learned behavior. Can I teach you to do things that you just kind of fly off the handle on some things? You don't catch yourself quick enough to kind of that, some of that emotional behavior. Can you be taught that? Sure, you can. But the top three, those are the hard ones. Are you proactive or not? Do you take initiative or don't you? The motivators are always your motivators. Now, there's some lifestyle events that might change those, but what we've been able to do is drill into the specific ones that you want to look at to the role. That's the key here, guys. You know, you can go out and do the DISC assessment, but the DISC assessment does not measure performance potential. It just tells you what personality you are. Personality has nothing to do with the performance potential. Yeah, does that make sense, Brian? And I think that's one of the things we struggle with this industry is we got great training. We got all the data in the world, but ultimately it still comes down to how long, and do I have the right person in the right seat? So if I can attack that first and address that first, then all the other things that I want should follow in line. You look at top performing chops and you see a common thread with all of them. They got the right people in the right seats. They got the right leadership. Would you agree? That's what makes them great. It's not about their demographics. Location does have something to do with it. There is some competitive things, but at the end of the day, people do business with people. I'm going to bring my car to you because I trust you. It's a commodity item. I can get my car fixed anywhere. So what makes you different is your people at the end of the day. So the more insight we can have into our people and what drives them and what motivates them and what they're good at and what they can learn and can't learn, that's the problem I really want to solve the most. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I do. And I'm gonna go on just a very short rabbit trail here. When you talk about having the right person in the right seat, it is impossible to get the right person in the right seat when that seat is currently occupied by the wrong person. And Kim and Chris Cotton just recorded an episode that will go live on Chris's podcast, The Weekly Blitz with Chris Cotton. When you have that wrong person in your business, how important it is to take action on that and to get them out of your business. And we've met so many people, you know, in this industry and outside of our industry. I'm watching it happen in my own church right now. And it's even more sensitive in the church because, you know, they have to be these loving people and all that. But when you have the wrong person in the wrong seat, you have to be willing to let that person go so that you can fill it with the right seat. And that's one of the things that I see about top performing shops. Like truly, I'm not talking about just a good shop. I'm talking about the best of the best. The top shops is that when they have the wrong person, they don't waste a bunch of time and let that person continue to occupy that seat. And they don't go with all of the excuses of, well, it's so hard to find technicians right now, or hiring a good service advisor is really hard to do, or all that. They take action on that to get the right person in the right seat. And it is the most important thing that you can do in your business is to make sure that every seat is occupied by the right person.
Yes. And the other thing, it's not only finding the top performer, but also knowing what the requirements are of that top performer. I could be really good at sales, but are you providing me the environment that I need? Are you providing me the coaching, the management I need? I'll give you a great example. You have an operations guy. Most operations guys are very process driven. They've got the manual. They got the bag, right? The tool bag, as I call it. But if the person that they're training, if they don't understand the person they're training doesn't need all 12 pages, they need the cliff notes and they will execute accordingly. Those are some of the things that some of the challenges we see when we bring a trainer in or we're training someone, whether it's external or internally, is how do I coach this type of top performer or whatever they are, right? I know who you are. I know how you operate. I know your inherent traits. How do I match you with the right compatibility? Whether that's from owner to manager, manager to service advisor, outside coach, because we see it a lot, right? The culture has a lot to do with it. I can have a room full of top performers, but they're not being managed properly.
Yeah, and top performers do not want to be micromanaged.
Generally speaking, they don't. But I've seen top performers that they do want that guidance. So it gets down to what we call coaching suggestions or coaching approach. We can actually predict that now. Scientifically, can predict that. Yeah.
Let's get into that part because we're talking about, all this idea of having the right person in the right seat and, all of these, learned behaviors versus inherent behaviors and all of that. How does Guest X help a shop owner to understand if they have the right person in the right seat?
Yeah. So the first thing we do is, one, we bring the numbers to the table. Let's first see what's going on, right? Let's just talk very simple and I ask all the time, what do you think your booked appointment rate is? What do you mean booked appointment rate? Okay. What do you think your lead to customer conversion rate is? Oh, I know that number is 30%. Okay. Let's unpack that. Let's talk about how many of your calls are really leads and how many of those calls are you're booking an appointment with. So the first step is let's look at the numbers. So our first goal with Guest X is to get that number. That's first step. What's your booked appointment rate? The next number I want to look at is what's your arrival rate? Okay, great. Now that I know those numbers, the next thing I want to measure is how well, one, when I ask you, Brian, do you have some type of process? Do you have a script? Do you have an expectation of your team? And how do you know they're following it? And how do you know what you gave them is the right process to get the expected outcome? And let's just use booked appointment rate for an example. Okay. I ask anybody, what do they think their booked appointment rate is? They go, I'm 90%. Okay. Have you validated that? What do you mean validated? Yeah, we listened to a few calls. No, you haven't validated it then. You did a hand selection pick and you picked through some calls. You don't have all of his phone calls, so you really don't know his number. So our first objective is to get that number and then talk about that number. That number then leads to, is it good or bad? Well, if you got an 80% booked appointment rate and you got a really high approval rate, you're solid.
As you talk to people, because you keep using the term, what do you think? What do you think your close rate is? What do you think your booked appointment rate is? As you are talking to people and you actually, like your tool has the actual data, but how many of the owners that you talk to are way overconfident before they have the actual data in what their numbers are going to be?
You ask an owner versus a service advisor, you get two different answers. The owner is dependent upon how much of a pulse he's got on the business, right? How much he really looks at, how much data he really looks at. If it's hands off, they have no clue. But if it's an operator, a good operator kind of knows numbers, looking at things, looks at dashboards and things of that nature, they got a general, they're pretty close. They're pretty close. You ask a service advisor, their definition of a lead is different. Well, that was a price shopper. That wasn't a lead. So again, you got to quantify things. But if you just ask them off the cuff, man, I'm 90%. The average we see is between 50 and 60%. We've seen it as low as 30 and 40%. Again, once you get that number, Brian, then you can look at some type of measurement of the effort. So I got your booked appointment rate. Now I'm going to look at the effort. What was the effort being applied to produce a higher output? Then that leads to what we call a performance potential measurement. And we call that a questionnaire. So when we onboard the client, everyone will take this questionnaire, and that's how we collect that data. And then we analyze that, run it through our system, right? That predicts that. And then we review that with the owner, their trainer, whoever is going to be responsible for coaching that team member. And then they use that information to then formulate their strategy. And sometimes it can come out to, and I like to say red, green, or yellow. Are you a green, or you're a yellow, or you're a red? Well, the green, red, and yellow is going to dictate, do I have the right person in the right seat? So let's say I've got somebody that's in the green from a performance potential perspective. They're in the green, but their booked appointment rate's low. Well, why is that? So again, part of tying all three of these together, we can quickly start to answer those questions very effectively and then provide that information back to the trainer, to the coach, to the operator, whoever's responsible for training the team. Does that make sense? It's not intrusive. We don't present it as an assessment of somebody. We present it as a questionnaire, an onboarding process.
So when we were at Tools, you showed me Guest X. I got to see some of the inner workings of this thing. And I was blown away by what I saw. But there was one of the things that I think that you feel is the most important part of it. I think it probably is one of the most important parts. And that is this report that is sent to the owner, the manager, 7 a.m. the morning after, like the next day. Talk about that report and what somebody would expect to see inside of that report.
So we call that the daily notifications report. And it's a snapshot of what happened yesterday. And it tells you the outcome of your calls, right? How many calls came into the shop? How many of those were leads? What the booked appointment rate was. And then of those ones, leads that you didn't book an appointment with, it gives you insight to the call so you can take action on it. That has probably been one of the most single valuable tools we've put out, right? Because nobody wants another dashboard to log into. So we try to automate feeding information, spoon feeding information, right? There's a time and a place to bring accountability to the table. And I've seen other systems like, oh, we send alerts immediately. That sometimes can be disruptive to the business. So you kind of got to figure out the environment of the shop, but we can tailor when we're sending out this information to them. But ultimately what we're doing is we're allowing you the opportunity to be proactive instead of reactive. And what I mean by that is that person's probably still in market. And if you were unable to agree to appointment time, or you weren't able to offer an appointment, or whatever the scenario is, let's call them back and see if we get them back in the door. And that's powerful. And we've seen anywhere from 20 to 50% rebook appointment when they have a good process. And again, a lot about what GuestX is just not another platform and another tool to measure something. We bring the consultative insight, right, is saying, hey, let's talk about how you're going to execute this and how you're going to implement this from a process perspective into your culture, into your shop. And all those things are important because when you start bringing phone calls into the shop, into a service advisor's hand, that can kind of come across the wrong way. And so you got to be very careful when you start filtering this kind of information down into the system. So we work real hard with the shop to make sure that they're leveraging this in the right way and not what I call weaponizing the data, right? You ever heard that term, right? Don't weaponize this data. And so we work real hard to say, how do you execute this? How do you roll it out? But that has probably been, Brian, one of the most valuable tools to bring awareness to the front of the house immediately to where they can take action.
And it's using artificial intelligence to analyze the call. It's letting you know, not in the report that I was just talking about, but it's letting you know, did the person who answered the phone, like, did they identify themselves? Did they give their name? Did they give the shop name? You know, was this an actual lead, or was it a service not offered? And then, you know, things like tone. I was blown away by that you can actually analyze the tone of the service advisor's voice. You know, were they friendly and welcoming and all of that? Did they ask for the appointment? And then you brought up something when we were talking about the appointment that I thought was really interesting. And that was perceived appointment versus appointment. And I've never really thought about that, but I have heard many, many perceived appointments. Talk about that a little bit.
Perceived. I won't let all of our sauce out, but what we've learned, again, studying this, it's one thing to build a mousetrap. It's another thing to understand what to do with it and how do you leverage it and how do you operationalize it. I'll ask people what their definition of an appointment is. And perceived is just bring it on by. Just bring it on by. Yeah, just drop it on by. Not confirmed, not a drop off, not a toe in or something of that nature. And so some of our sauce is the ability to recognize those calls with the intent of, do I need to take some action on that, right? From a training perspective, right? And a coaching perspective, because ultimately is that behavior or that type of communication driving the expected outcome? And what is the expected outcome? Did they show up? And so we want to be able to connect that information to the next step. The next step is, did you show up? Did you arrive? That's why we've got these unique identifiers in our process that looks at, I'm going from step A to step B to step C. That's a big one. I mean, you'd be amazed how many people go, yeah, I scheduled an appointment with them. What you said is you just go by.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think about it at my shop, and I've talked about our service advisor, Michael, which Michael works with us now at Shop Marketing Pros as a salesperson. And he was so good as a service advisor. But one of the things that he would do is, if he knew that at 10 a.m., Mrs. Jones is going to be showing up. She's a first-time client. She's going to be showing up in her 2010 Tahoe. At 9:55, a Tahoe comes driving in the parking lot. He can walk to the door and pretty much greet her by name, because he can make the assumption that, okay, Mrs. Jones has an appointment at 10 a.m. for a Tahoe. Here comes a Tahoe with a lady, dropping it off. He can meet her at the door and greet her by name. Well, you can't do that kind of stuff, with a perceived appointment. And I know y'all are looking at it from a completely different lens than that. But I never really thought about it until you said it, but just how many times perceived appointments are offered to me for whatever service that might be. Just like I had a weed eater that I needed to bring in to get it taken, get some work done on it. And it was the same thing. I called up the local company and, asked them about bringing it in. And they're like, yeah, just drop it on by. Now I'm looking at that and it's like, it is a missed opportunity to provide a higher level of service, but it's also a missed opportunity to be able to track how many of your appointments actually show up, because you can't track whether a perceived appointment showed up, but you can track that, oh, yes, bring it in on Tuesday, the 26th at 8:05 a.m.
Yes. Do you ever go to the dentist and the dentist just says, just come on back?
Not a chance.
No. Right. So there's a level of commitment that I want to have with someone that I've spent time with. I've addressed their concerns. I'm a professional. My business is a professional. And obviously there are those cases, right? I get it. It's not 100%. But if I don't commit and you don't commit, we don't have a commitment. So you kind of get off the phone going, well, I guess I can if I want to. Right. But if I've taken the time to get your vehicle information, put you on the schedule, remind you that we're going to be sending you a reminder of our appointment. If anything should change, please let us know. You're committing to me. You're going to have a higher sense of responsibility as a consumer. Yes. A retail shop, think of retailing. I don't have to go to the retail shop because it just goes if I want to. I'm not talking about, you know what I mean by retail, right? If I just want to go to Lowe's, I go to Lowe's. I don't have to make an appointment. I can go whenever I want to. If I want to go see a professional, a service, if I need my HVAC, if I need my plumber, any trade or any of those, every now and then, well, think about it. Let's switch gears just for a second. Think about our trade industries, landscaping, mechanical work, HVAC, roofing, the guys that just say, well, I'll swing by your house tomorrow afternoon. How do you take that versus my technician will be at your house between 3 and 3:30? Which one do you want?
Yeah, I want the between 3 and 3:30.
Yeah. Which one sounds more professional?
For one, it shows me that you respect my time, because it drives me nuts, especially some of these like 4-hour windows that some of these service companies will give you. And I understand why they do it. I get it. One of the things that we were taught when we had our shop was to never schedule on the hour or the half hour. So you don't offer somebody, you don't tell them bring it in at 8 a.m. You tell them bring it in at 8:05, 8:10. It's much more precise. If you just say 8 o'clock, I'll probably be there within a half hour either way of it, or 8:30, same thing. But if you're telling them a much tighter window, like, okay, you have an appointment at 8:10 a.m., it's an unusual number. So they're like, oh, they must be like scheduling really precise. So I need to make sure I'm on time.
I'll give you another little nugget. How many times do you hear on the conversations where the customer calls and says, I want to schedule an appointment? And you turn around and say, well, what day works for you?
Oh, gosh.
And I tell you, tomorrow afternoon, 2:00, and you're booked. So how many times have you heard people tell someone all the reasons why they can't do business with me? Well, I don't have this and I don't have that. I can't get you in now. Well, one of the ways to get around that is taking ownership of the call and leading the call, right? So I know there's a sense of urgency. Your car's not running, whatever. Instead of saying, well, let's schedule an appointment for you and leave it open-ended, I'm getting ready to blow off my foot if I cannot accommodate the next words out of the caller's mouth, versus leading with, I can get you in at 2:15 this afternoon. Does that work for you? My next available time slot keeps me in control of the conversation. I know a lot of great trainers talk about this, right? These get back to those things I was talking about. These are skill sets. You either have them or you don't, or you're going to have to learn them. The question comes down to how much and how long is going to have to be invested to get you there. These are all what I call nuggets, man, that you listen to a call and you can just see the left turn and the right turn. And hindsight's everything, right? When you're in the moment, it's hard unless you've really got a process and you've been trained on that process and you know how to navigate and you can stay in front of it, right? You're very proactively thinking. And one of the big things we measure is someone's listening style. Now, why is that important? If you take a service, if I take a shop, we hear the same problems 100,000 times. But to the caller, this is unique to them. So if you're listening to me to respond instead of listening to understand, you're never going to catch the nuggets that I'm getting ready to give you on the phone because you're like, oh, I know where this is going, blah, 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 blah. These are the little things that are really big things. These are the things that move you from a 50, 60% approval rate to an 80% approval rate. This is what separates, the good to great, right? One, I got to kind of go from here to here, but I think the hardest move is going from good to great. And we talk about the top performing shops. Those are the great shops. That move from good to great was probably hard.
It's like losing the last 10 pounds.
It's like losing the last 10 pounds. Great analogy.
I think that we've brought a lot of value to the listeners today. Is there anything that we should have talked about that we did?
It's a mouthful, guys. I know it's a lot to think about. All I would encourage you to rock away with is three things, right? Can they and will they, and how much and how long to get them there? Regardless, but yes, I don't want to do an info commercial here, but yes, we have a tool that can give you that information. Okay. But ultimately, it's about measuring output, effort, and performance potential. Those are the three keys to this, right? And so I think we hit on all of those. Brian, Gabe Spoonfield, it's a lot to think about, but just think, I encourage people to think about this conversation in those terms: output, effort, and ability.
Well, thank you. If someone wants to take a look at Guest X, what is the best way for them to do that?
So they can go to our website. That's GuestX.co, not .com. Or they can shoot an email over to me. That's Stan, S-T-A-N, at GuestX.co. And that would be the easiest way they could set up a little time for a consultation and walk through. And our approach is really, let's understand what problems you're trying to solve first. And we have a conversation about that. So yeah, that's it. I'd love to help anybody we can.
And look, y'all, seriously, this is something that you should go take a look at. Even if you think that your service advisors are the best of the best, this is something that you seriously should go take a look at because it will give you insights to things that you would have never been able to see before. And that I don't do this on this podcast, very often at all. But this is something that when I saw it, I immediately believed in it. So go check out that tool. Stan, thank you again for being with us today and for the knowledge that you have brought to our listeners. For those of you who are listening, remember, we are just one of a handful of podcasts on the Aftermarket Radio Network. You can find the others at aftermarketradionetwork.com. I hope that you'll listen in again next week. And until then, go fill those bays.
Thanks, Brian.
You've been listening to the Auto Repair Marketing Podcast with Kim and Brian Walker. Follow the podcast on your favorite listening app. Find their emails in the show notes and visit them at shopmarketingpros.com. Let Kim and Brian know what you want discussed because they're all about advancing the aftermarket.